And joining us now from Brussels is Ryan Heath, the Senior EU correspondent for Politico. This is the third bailout. Greece is hoping three's a charm, but it's not looking good right now. Germans in particular are very pessimistic. What's your take?
I actually have a slightly different spin, Lynda, where you've got to remember that even just last week, the Eurogroup was united but against Greece. So to be divided, it's not ideal, but it is a step forward. And we've got one of the big member states finally arguing to build bridges. So that's France. They were very, very involved over the last few days, whereas the EU officials were kind of sitting there, you call us, we'll be there if you call, whereas the French were really actively getting involved. So I think that there is a possibility for an outcome tomorrow morning, and it is just some of these smaller member states who are holding out. But, you have a very difficult situation when Germany is essentially sitting back, waiting until the last minute to decide whether they are going to come in and save Greece on a very rational basis, because I think it really comes down to those cold calculations now.
So what do you think about this talk of Germany putting up a potential temporary Greek exit? And whether that could possibly happen. Is that feasible?
Yes, it is feasible. I've heard that talk come, it's been going around for 2.5 months now, actually, and we've only seen it on paper just in the last couple of days. But I think that it is plausible. What isn't plausible is somehow to suggest that it's temporary in the sense of 2 or 3 months. It really is going to be something where you might see a currency circulating, we'll call it the drachma in Greece, but where you have people continuing to abide by the Maastricht Treaty rules. If you don't have those rules in place, you can only imagine the fears of those Eurozone ministers at the moment, where you let Greece not only go out of the Eurozone, but they don't have to abide by the rules they currently have to abide by. So in that instance, the chances of paying back all the money get lower and lower and lower. And so that's why people are very keen to keep them somehow inside the Eurozone, even if there ends up being a parallel currency.
And if there was some sort of temporary exit, is it likely that Greece would ever return to the EU?
I think that is highly debatable. I think you have a situation in Greece where for decades, if not for centuries, there has been a problem with the political elite and with the structures for the state being able to collect and distribute taxes. We saw some very disturbing figures this week where the welfare system in Greece, more money goes to the top 20% of earners than to the bottom 20% of earners. You have a system that's very antiquated in terms of digital versus analog. So it's going to be very difficult for Greece to develop the culture where its state is functioning, to literally have the systems where it can collect the money to pay back its creditors. So it's going to be a long haul, no matter what the Eurogroup and the leaders decide tomorrow.
And they've already had such a tough situation already. 5 years of austerity, unemployment is at 25%, 60% if you look at young people. What could be the worst possible outcome for Greece?
I think the worst possible outcome is if they agree to more and more reforms, which are going to be of the austerity nature, but don't take the tough actions that would actually allow them to collect the taxes to repay their creditors. Because in that case, you pile on the austerity, you don't create the conditions for growth, and you also leave them in the straitjacket of the economic and monetary union. So it could be much better in the short term, not in the days ahead, but in the months ahead if Greece were to leave. But then it's obviously going to come not only at a very high financial cost to the European Union, but a very high symbolic and political cost as well. Because if you can't figure out how to deal with this 2% of the European economy, then it raises very big questions about what you would do in a more serious situation, or if a bigger economy got into this sort of trouble. So it really is an existential question for these EU leaders, and they're not going to take the decision lightly.
There's a lot riding on this, that's for sure. Ryan Heath, thank you very much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. We're going to be right back after a short break. Stay with us.